Welcome to another edition of our series, Real People in Scripture, where we look at the lives of real people who lived in real places at real times. We've been taking a look at the life of Abraham these past few episodes, and I had mentioned that we were going to take a little bit longer look at something that happened with his nephew, Lot. Now, this is, I'm going to use a very technical word here, icky. What happens here in Genesis 19 is just gross. It's icky. And we struggle when we read things like this because we know it's wrong, and yet it's part of God's story of how we, as His children, lived. And so, what am I getting to? What's the story I want to look at with Lot today? Well, this is after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember Lot and his daughters, they fled into the mountains. The wife turned back and she turned into a pillar of salt. But Lot and his daughters continued on into the mountains and they lived there for a while. And one day, the older daughter turned to her younger sister and said, "Look, our father is old and there's no one else left on earth." That's what she intended when she said more than that. But there's nobody left. We need to do something to essentially continue the human race. So what her plan was to get their father, Lot, drunk. While he was drunk, they would sleep with him so they could both get pregnant and have children and, for them, continue the human race. Well, they did it. They got Lot drunk and they had a relationship with him, and both of them became pregnant. Now, the older daughter had a son who was named Moab. The younger daughter had a son named Ben-Ami. Now, from Moab, we get the Moabites. And as we read through the scriptures, we can see how the Moabites became an enemy of God's people. And Ben-Ami, from his line, from his lineage, we get the Ammonites. And we can see how they became a people. During the time of the Exodus, they refused to help God's people as they were coming out of the land. And when we fast forward to the time of Nehemiah, and they're rebuilding the walls of the city of Jerusalem, and there was an Ammonite there, Tobiah the Ammonite, who fought against God's people and the restoration of Jerusalem. It seems like a very challenging thing to have happen in Scripture. And my point is that it didn't have to happen. Lot and his daughters could have chosen a different path. The world wasn't destroyed. They just weren't brave enough to just ask God's wisdom and direction and step out of that cave. They were living in their proverbial box. And in that, they then sinned, which caused problems for Israel for generation upon generation upon generation. So here's my point. Here's my challenge for you today. I want to encourage you to trust in God's plan, to trust in the path that He has set out for you. It's so easy for us to try and take shortcuts, for us to try and do things the way that we want to, and yet God's plan, God's path is always perfect. And when we don't follow it, even though it may not be our intention, even though we may not see it fully, not following God's plan can cause problems for generations to come. God doesn't cast the consequences of a person's sin upon the next generation, but the ramifications can continue. And we see that in the case of Lot's daughters here. Their sins caused ramifications that continue and continue. So be careful as you are walking forward in faith. Be careful to see God's perfect plan for your life, and be careful to stay with it. Don't step out of that path. I know it's difficult, I know it's challenging, but you'll be blessed when you do things God's way. That's all the time we have. Remember, your time is His time, so please use it wisely. God bless.